The massive viewing screen in the Galactic Council chamber showed something that none of the 200 alien species present had ever seen before. A creature, dark as the void itself and longer than 3 cargo ships, moved through space with gentle waves of its body. "Another one has been spotted in Sector 7, announced First Speaker Gray, his crystalline form shimming with concern. "That makes 15 of these creatures in the past month alone." The council chamber erupted in worried murmurs. These giant space-dwelling creatures had appeared seemingly out of nowhere, and their presence was causing panic across shipping lanes. "They're disrupting trade routes," shouted a representative from the merchant worlds. "2 of our ships had to make emergency jumps last week just to avoid these things." On the screen, the creature's massive form gracefully curved through the darkness between stars. Its skin seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, making it look like a moving piece of the void. Only its subtle movements and occasional pulses of bioluminescence revealed its true nature. First Speaker Gray raised all 4 of his arms for silence. "We've named them void worms based on their appearance and movement patterns. Our best scientists estimate each one is roughly the size of a small moon." The council's chief scientist, Dr. Blue, stepped forward. His tentacles waved in agitation as he presented his findings. "We've attempted communication using all known frequencies and methods. They show no response to standard protocols. They appear to be simple space-dwelling animals, possibly drawn to our shipping lanes by engine emissions." A military commander from one of the older species stood up, his armored exoskeleton clicking. "Then the solution is simple. We should eliminate these pests before they become a greater threat to galactic commerce." The discussion might have ended there, with the council voting to declare the void worms a dangerous species to be removed. However, fate had other plans. At that exact moment, the chamber's doors slid open, and the newest members of the Galactic Council arrived. The humans were late to their first full council session, something that made several of the more rigid species click or buzz with disapproval. The human representative, Ambassador Jack Wilson, walked in with his team. He was a tall man with graying hair and weathered features, wearing the simple blue uniform of the Earth Diplomatic Corps. "My apologies for our tardiness," Wilson said, bowing slightly to First Speaker Gray. "Our ship encountered one of your void worms during our approach to the station. We stopped to observe it." "You stopped?" First Speaker Gray's crystalline form flickered in confusion. "That was extremely dangerous. These creatures are fascinating," interrupted Dr. Kate Brown, the human scientific advisor. She stepped forward, her eyes bright with excitement as she looked at the creature on the screen. "We've never seen anything like them. The way they move through space, their size, their apparent biological functions, they're amazing." The council chamber went quiet. The humans' reaction was not what anyone had expected. Where other species saw a threat to be eliminated, these newcomers saw something to study and admire. Ambassador Wilson cleared his throat. "If I may make a suggestion, rather than immediately deciding these creatures are a threat, perhaps we should try to understand them first. Earth's history has taught us that what appears dangerous isn't always so." "They don't respond to any known form of communication," Dr. Blue pointed out, his tentacles twisting in frustration. Dr. Brown smiled. "Then perhaps we're not trying the right forms. On Earth, we've learned to communicate with many different species, from dolphins in our oceans to primates in our forests. Each required a unique approach. Maybe these void worms just need a different method." The military commander stood again. "This is ridiculous. They're clearly just animals." "Many species once said the same about dolphins," Wilson replied calmly, "until we learned they had their own language, culture, and complex social structures. Sometimes intelligence doesn't look the way we expect it to." First Speaker Gray's crystal form pulsed thoughtfully. The human's perspective was unusual. Most species would have agreed with the military solution. But perhaps these newcomers had a point. "Very well," Gray announced. We will give the humans one standard month to attempt communication with these creatures. But if they fail, we must take action to protect our shipping lanes." As Wilson and Brown left the chamber, they shared a knowing look. Humanity had faced this kind of challenge before, proving that something alien could be understood rather than feared. Now they just had to figure out how to talk to moon-sized space worms. Captain Tom Reed stood at the viewport of the Earth science vessel Explorer, watching the stars drift by. His ship wasn't the newest or the biggest in Earth's fleet, but it was perfect for their mission. The Explorer had been specially modified with enhanced sensors and a unique communication array for their attempt to study the void worms. "Captain, we got something," called out Lisa from her sensor station. "There's a void worm about 30,000 kilometers off our port side." Tom turned away from the viewport, his weathered face breaking into a smile. "Perfect. Let's keep our distance but stay close enough to observe." "How are the new sensors working?" "Getting good readings," Lisa replied, her fingers dancing over the holographic controls. "This one's bigger than the others we've seen, almost 40 kilometers long." The bridge crew worked quietly as they maintained their position relative to the massive space creature. Unlike the military vessels of other species, which kept their distance from the void worms, the Explorer moved closer. "Beginning our standard scans," announced Robert, the ship's science officer. He had argued against the common belief that the worms were just mindless beasts. "Look at how it moves. There's a pattern there." Tom nodded, watching the creature's graceful movements. While other species saw chaos, he saw purpose. The worm wasn't just drifting, it was following something. "Has anyone noticed," Tom said, walking to the main display, "that they seem to follow the old trade routes that haven't been used in thousands of years?" The bridge crew looked up from their stations. This was why they liked working with Captain Reed. He saw things others missed. "Pull up the ancient trade route maps the Council gave us," Tom ordered. "Overlay them with the void worm sightings from the past month." The display lit up with dots and lines. The pattern was clear. The worms weren't randomly wandering. They were following paths that ancient spacefaring civilizations had used long ago. "Send this data to Dr. Brown at the Council," Tom said. "This could be important." Just then, the ship's communication system buzzed. A Council vessel was approaching, its captain demanding to know why the Explorer was so close to the dangerous creature. "We're conducting authorized research," Tom replied calmly. "The Council gave us permission to study the void worms." "Study them from a safe distance," the alien captain insisted. "Your primitive vessel would be destroyed if that beast attacked." Tom smiled. "If they wanted to attack, they've had plenty of chances. We've been following this one for 6 hours." The alien captain's silence spoke volumes. "Captain," Robert called out suddenly, "I'm picking up something unusual. The worm is vibrating." Tom moved to Robert's station. The readings showed clear patterns of low-frequency vibrations coming from the creature. They weren't random, they were regular, repeating. "They're communicating," Tom whispered. "Not with radio waves or standard signals, but with vibrations through space itself. Like whale songs, but in the vacuum of space." The alien captain, still on the communication channel, scoffed. "Ridiculous. Our species have studied space phenomena for thousands of years. We would have noticed." "Maybe you weren't looking for the right things," Tom interrupted politely. "Sometimes the simplest answers are the hardest to see." He turned to his crew. "Begin recording these vibrations, map their patterns, and get our low-frequency transmitter ready, the one we designed based on Earth's whale songs. You're going to try to talk to it." The alien captain sounded shocked. "No," Tom replied with a smile. "First, we're going to listen. That's something humans learned a long time ago. Before you can communicate, you have to understand." As the Explorer continued its careful dance with the void worm, Tom couldn't help but feel excited. They were on the verge of something big. Other species saw monsters in space, but humans saw the possibility of something more. Record everything, he ordered. Every vibration, every movement. The answer's there. We just have to be patient enough to find it. The void worm continued its graceful movement through space, unaware that it was being watched by the first species that didn't see it as a threat, but as a mystery to be understood. Anna Miller hadn't slept in 20 hours, but she didn't care. The science officer of the Explorer stared at her screen, watching patterns emerge from the data they'd collected. 3 weeks had passed since they first detected the void worm's vibrations, and something was beginning to make sense. "Captain Reed," she called out, her voice echoing through the ship's comm system. "I think I've found something." Tom Reed arrived at the science lab minutes later, looking as tired as Anna felt. The whole crew had been working overtime, knowing their 1-month deadline from the council was almost up. "Look at this," Anna said, pointing to her screen. "We've been thinking about these vibrations all wrong. They're not just communication. They're part of how the worms navigate through space." She pulled up 2 different displays. "This is a normal space current," she explained, showing swirling patterns of invisible forces that move through the void. "And these," she pointed to another display, "are the vibrations we recorded from the youngest void worm we found." Tom's eyes widened. "They match." "Exactly." Anna's excitement made her bounce in her chair. "The worms aren't just making random noise. They're mapping space currents with their vibrations, like bats using echolocation." The captain leaned closer to the screen. "So when we see multiple worms vibrating, they're talking to each other about safe paths through space." Anna finished. "The older ones are teaching the younger ones." Just then, Robert's voice came through the comm. "Captain, we've got 3 void worms approaching our position. One of them is the small one we've been tracking." Tom straightened up. "How long until they reach us?" 10 minutes. Should we move away?" Tom looked at Anna, who shook her head. "No," he decided. "This is our chance. Anna, can you program our transmitter to copy the navigation patterns we recorded?" "Already on it," she replied, her fingers flying over the controls. "But Captain, there's something else. The younger worms make different vibrations, simpler ones. I think we should try to copy those first." The next 10 minutes were tense. The crew watched as 3 massive shapes appeared in their viewport. 2 adult void worms, each over 40 kilometers long, escorted a smaller one that was only about 20 kilometers in length. "Transmitter ready," Anna announced. "Beginning broadcast." The Explorer began vibrating slightly as it sent out low-frequency waves matching the patterns they'd recorded from young void worms. At first, nothing happened. The 3 massive creatures continued their approach. Then the smallest worm changed course. "It's coming straight for us," Robert reported, his voice tense. "Hold position," Tom ordered. "Anna, keep broadcasting." The young void worm moved closer, its enormous body gracefully sliding through space. It stopped less than a kilometer from the Explorer, incredibly close for something its size. Then it did something amazing. It replied. The ship's sensors picked up clear vibrations coming from the worm, matching the pattern they were sending, but with subtle changes. It's correcting our pronunciation," Anna whispered in awe. The 2 adult worms stayed back, watching. They seemed to be letting the younger one interact with the strange little ship that was trying to speak its language. "Send the pattern back with the corrections," Tom ordered. When they did, the young worm moved even closer. Its massive body began to glow with soft patterns of bioluminescence, creating a beautiful light show around the Explorer. "Look at that," Anna breathed. "It's not afraid of us at all. It's curious." Tom smiled. "Just like us." He opened a channel to the bridge. "Robert, contact the council. Tell them we've made first contact with the void worms, and tell them," he paused, watching the young creature's peaceful display, "tell them we'd like to introduce them to our new friend." The crew watched in amazement as the young void worm continued to communicate with them through vibrations and light, teaching them its language just as the older worms had taught it. Humanity had done what the other species thought impossible. They had begun to understand these ancient space travelers. "You know," Anna said softly, "we should give it a name." Tom watched as the creature danced through space around their ship. "How about Buddy?" he suggested. Simple, friendly, and straight to the point. The worm pulsed with bright lights, as if approving of its new name. 2 weeks had passed since first contact with Buddy, and the explorer's crew was learning more every day. The young void worm hadn't left their side, much to the concern of passing alien ships that couldn't understand why a human vessel was deliberately staying so close to one of the space monsters. "Incoming space debris," Robert announced from his station. "Pretty big cluster, moving fast." Before Captain Tom could order evasive maneuvers, Buddy moved. The massive creature positioned itself between the explorer and the incoming debris field. Its body pulsed with bright patterns, and suddenly the debris changed course, pushed away by invisible forces. "Amazing," Anna said, checking her readings. "Buddy just manipulated the space currents to protect us. The worms don't just read these currents, they can control them." Tom watched as their friend moved back to its usual position near the ship. Over the past weeks, they'd learned that the void worms were far more than simple animals. They were ancient beings who had mastered space travel in ways that made conventional engines look primitive. "Captain," Lisa called out, "3 more void worms approaching. They're different from the others we've seen." The crew watched as 3 enormous shapes emerged from the darkness. These worms were covered in patterns that looked like scars, marks of incredible age. As they approached, Buddy's body lit up with complex patterns of bioluminescence. "They're talking," Anna said, studying the readings. "The vibration patterns are incredibly complex. I think these might be elders." The ancient void worms circled the explorer, their massive bodies moving with impossible grace for their size. Then they began to emit vibrations that made the ship's sensors light up like never before. "These patterns," Anna gasped, "they're not just about space currents. They're telling us something else, something about time." Tom leaned forward in his chair. "What do you mean?" "The patterns match stellar movements," Anna explained, her voice filled with wonder. "But not current ones. These show star positions from millions of years ago. They're showing us their memories." The revelation stunned the bridge crew into silence. The void worms weren't just spacefaring creatures. They were living records of cosmic history. They had been traveling the stars since before humans had even evolved on Earth. Suddenly, Buddy moved closer to the ship and began emitting new vibrations. The patterns were simpler, clearly meant for the humans to understand. It's translating for us," Anna said. "Buddy's taking the complex messages from the elders and breaking them down into patterns we can comprehend." Over the next few hours, through Buddy's translations, the crew began to understand fragments of the elders' message. The void worms had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations. They knew of ancient artifacts and hidden worlds that no current species had ever found. That's why they follow the old trade routes, Tom realized. They're not just paths, they're memories. Stories of civilizations long gone. As if confirming this, one of the elder worms moved forward and began a new pattern of vibrations. Through their sensors, the humans watched as the pattern formed a map, a star chart showing places no human or council ship had ever visited. "They want to show us something," Anna said softly. "They want to share their knowledge with us." Tom smiled as he watched Buddy position itself next to its elders, its body glowing with friendly patterns they'd come to recognize as excitement. Other alien ships might see monsters, but humans had found teachers. Ancient beings willing to share the secrets of the universe with a species wise enough to listen first and judge later. "Send a message to Earth Command," Tom ordered. "Tell them we're going to need more research vessels. And tell the Council." He paused, watching the magnificent creatures before them. "Tell them that the void worms aren't just intelligent. They might be the most advanced beings we've ever encountered. The elder worms began to move, clearly inviting the explorer to follow. With Buddy by their side, they were about to embark on a journey into parts of space no modern species had ever seen. The emergency alert blared through the explorer's corridors at 300 ship time. Captain Tom Reed rushed to the bridge, still pulling on his uniform jacket. "Report," he ordered, dropping into his command chair. "Multiple warships detected." Lisa answered from her station. "They're from the Militant Alliance, the group that opposed peaceful contact with the Void Worms. They're charging weapons." On the main screen, Tom could see 5 heavily armed vessels approaching a cluster of Void Worms. Among them was Buddy, who had been introducing the humans to more of its kind. "The Alliance ships are broadcasting," Robert announced. "They're saying the worms are a threat to galactic security. They're claiming the worms' ability to control space currents could be used as a weapon." Tom's jaw tightened. The Militant Alliance had opposed humanity's efforts from the start. Now that the truth about the Void Worms' intelligence and abilities had spread, they saw it as proof that the creatures were too dangerous to exist. "Get me a channel to their commander," Tom ordered. While waiting, he turned to Anna. "How many worms are in that cluster?" "7, she replied, worry clear in her voice. 2 elders, 3 adults, and 2 young ones, including Buddy." The main screen flickered, showing a stern-faced alien commander. His species had evolved from predators, and it showed in his sharp-toothed expression. "This is your only warning, human," the commander growled. "Leave this sector. These creatures are a threat to galactic peace and will be eliminated." "Those creatures are an ancient, peaceful species," Tom argued. "They've done nothing but help us understand the universe better. They've been protecting ships from space hazards, not threatening them." "Their powers make them dangerous," the commander replied. "We've seen your reports. They can control space currents. They could destroy entire fleets if they wanted to. But they don't want to." Tom stood from his chair. "In millions of years of existence, they've never attacked anyone. They're teachers, explorers, not weapons." The commander's only response was to cut the transmission. "They're moving into attack position," Lisa reported. "Weapons at full charge." Tom made his decision instantly. "Move the Explorer between the Alliance ships and the worms. Broadcast on all frequencies." The bridge crew moved quickly, positioning their small science vessel as a barrier. "This is Captain Tom Reed of the Earth Science Vessel Explorer," Tom broadcast. "We are placing ourselves under the protection of the Galactic Council's peace laws. Any attack on these void worms will have to go through us first." The Alliance ships slowed but didn't power down their weapons. "Sir," Robert called out. "Buddy and the others. They're moving." The 7 void worms had begun to arrange themselves in a pattern around the Explorer. Their massive bodies glowed with complex patterns of bioluminescence. The space around them began to shimmer. "They're generating some kind of field using the space currents," Anna reported, amazed. "But it's not aggressive. They're creating a protective barrier around us and themselves." The Alliance commander's face appeared on screen again. "You see, they're using their powers. They're protecting us." Tom interrupted. "Just like we're protecting them. That's what friends do." Suddenly, new ships began appearing on their sensors, Council peacekeeping vessels responding to their broadcast. Among them was a ship carrying Ambassador Wilson and Dr. Brown. "The Council wants evidence that these beings are peaceful," Tom smiled. "Well, now they have it. The most powerful beings we've ever met, and they choose to defend rather than attack." The Alliance ships, now faced with both Council forces and the impressive display of the Void Worm's protective abilities, began to power down their weapons. "Send all sensor data to the Council ships," Tom ordered. "Let them see exactly what happened here. Let them see that humanity was right. Sometimes the best way to handle a seemingly dangerous situation is with friendship instead of fear." Buddy's massive form moved closer to the Explorer, its bioluminescent patterns showing what the crew had learned to recognize as happiness. Today, the bond between humans and void worms had grown even stronger, proving to the galaxy that understanding was better than fear. 2 months after the confrontation with the militant alliance, the Explorer floated in a region of space that no modern ship had ever visited. 3 more human vessels had joined them, each with its own void worm guide, but Buddy still stayed close to the Explorer. "These readings are incredible," Anna said, staring at her displays in wonder. "The space currents here form patterns I've never seen before. It's like an intersection of cosmic streams." Captain Tom Reed nodded, watching as Buddy and 2 elder worms led their small fleet through this strange region. After the incident with the Alliance, the Council had officially recognized the void worms as a sapient species and granted humans permission to learn from them. "New signal from Buddy," Robert announced. "It's using our simplified communication method." Over the past months, humans and void worms had developed a basic language combining vibrations, lights, and simple patterns. It wasn't perfect, but it allowed them to share important information. The bridge crew watched as Buddy's massive form began to glow in familiar patterns. The young worm had become an excellent teacher, always patient with human attempts to understand. "It's telling us to stop here," Anna translated. "Something about history. No, memory. This place holds memories." The elder worms moved into a circle formation around the ships. Their bodies began to pulse with light in perfect synchronization. The space around them seemed to shimmer and twist. "Energy readings are off the charts," Lisa reported from her station. "But it's stable. They're doing something with the space currents." Suddenly, the void around them lit up with countless points of light. But these weren't stars. They were images, projected somehow through the void worm's manipulation of space itself. "It's a map," Tom breathed in awe. "No more than that. It's their memories." The images showed ancient space stations, long-lost civilizations, and paths through space that no one had traveled in millions of years. The void worms were sharing their vast knowledge, accumulated over eons of peaceful exploration. "Look at this," Anna called out excitedly. "These structures. They're still out there. The worms know where all these ancient ruins and artifacts are. They've been protecting them, waiting for someone worthy to share them with." Tom smiled as he watched Buddy move closer to the Explorer, its patterns showing what they now recognized as pride and friendship. "They're not just sharing locations," he realized. "They're offering to take us there." The elder worm's patterns shifted, and new images appeared. They showed dangerous regions of space, hidden gravitational traps, and safe paths through seemingly impassable areas. "This is incredible," Robert said. "With this knowledge, we could revolutionize space travel, make it safer, faster, more efficient." A message from one of the other human ships came through. "Captain Reed, we're receiving similar displays over here. The worms are showing us different regions, different memories. There's so much to learn." The Council observation ship that had accompanied them transmitted next. "This is unprecedented," the Council observer admitted. "We had no idea they possessed such knowledge. Your species' approach to them has given us access to wisdom we never imagined existed." Tom watched as Buddy playfully created a small current that made the Explorer rock gently, like a parent teaching a child to swim. "We just had to show them kindness," he said. "Treat them like friends instead of monsters." More images appeared around them. Past wars the worms had witnessed, civilizations that had risen and fallen, and dangers they had helped others avoid. They weren't just sharing navigation data. They were sharing their perspective on life itself. "They've seen so much," Anna said softly. "So many species fight and destroy each other. Maybe that's why they chose us. Because when we saw them, we chose to understand rather than fear." The elder worm's patterns shifted again, showing new paths, new places to explore. They were offering to guide humanity to wonders no living species had seen in millions of years. Buddy's patterns brightened, clearly eager to show its human friends more. The young worm had grown alongside them, learning about humans just as they learned about its kind. "Send a message to Earth Command," Tom ordered with a smile. "Tell them we're going to need a lot more research ships. The void worms have offered to teach us everything they know, and we have a lot to learn." 1 year after first contact with the void worms, the Galactic Council chamber looked very different. Where once there had been only alien representatives in their seats, now massive viewing screens showed the graceful forms of elder void worms, their bodies glowing with patterns that the human translators interpreted for the council. Captain Tom Reed stood at the speaker's podium, Buddy's massive form visible through the chamber's space-facing windows. The young worm had grown considerably over the past year, but still maintained its playful nature with the explorer's crew. "The joint human-worm expeditions have mapped 30 new safe routes through dangerous space," Tom reported to the assembled representatives. "Trade ships using these routes have cut their journey times in half, and there have been 0 accidents under void worm guidance." First Speaker Gray's crystalline form sparkled with approval. "And what of the ancient artifacts you've discovered?" 17 sites so far," Tom replied, bringing up images on the main display. "The void worms led us to ruins of civilizations that existed millions of years ago. The knowledge we're gaining is beyond anything we imagined." The chamber filled with impressed murmurs. Even the formerly hostile species had to admit that the partnership between humans and void worms had brought unprecedented benefits to the galaxy. Anna Miller, now the head of the Human Void Worm Communication Project, stepped up to join Tom. "We've also made huge progress in understanding their language," she reported. "The worms don't just communicate through vibrations and light. They share memories and emotions through their control of space currents. They experience time and space in ways we're only beginning to understand." Outside the window, Buddy created a beautiful display of light patterns, which the other worms visible on the screens matched. The synchronized display made the chamber glow with shifting colors. "They're showing us their joy," Anna translated, smiling. "They're happy to no longer be alone in their travels through space." A representative from one of the merchant worlds stood up. "We once feared these beings would destroy our trade routes. Now they protect our ships and show us better paths. We were wrong about them." The military commander who had once advocated for destroying the worms spoke next. "Their power to control space currents could indeed be used as a weapon," he admitted. "But they choose to use it to help and protect. Perhaps they are more civilized than many of us." Tom nodded. "The void worms have seen countless civilizations rise and fall. They've learned that cooperation and understanding lead to growth, while fear and aggression lead to destruction. They chose to reveal themselves to us now because they saw humanity's potential to understand this truth." Ambassador Wilson stepped forward with an announcement. "The Council has officially approved the creation of a new joint space exploration force. Human ships, guided by void worm wisdom, will lead expeditions into unknown regions of space. Any species willing to learn from both humans and worms is welcome to join." Outside, Buddy moved closer to the station, its massive form casting shifting shadows through the chamber windows. The worm had become a symbol of the partnership between humans and these ancient space-dwelling beings. 1 year ago, Tom said, looking at his friend through the window, "We thought we were just studying strange creatures. Instead, we found teachers, guides, and friends. The void worms could have shared their knowledge with any species, but they waited for one that would approach them with curiosity instead of fear." The chamber's screen showed more void worms gathering in space, their bodies creating a spectacular light show visible across half the sector. It was their way of celebrating, of showing hope for the future. "Today marks the beginning of a new era," Ambassador Wilson concluded. "One where humanity helps bridge the gap between the youngest and oldest species in known space. Together, we'll explore further and learn more than any of us could have achieved alone." As the council chamber erupted in approving sounds from dozens of species, Buddy began to pulse with the patterns that humans now recognized as laughter. The young worm had found its place in the universe, teaching ancient wisdom to new friends who had looked past its frightening appearance to find the intelligence within. The explorer's crew watched their friends display with pride. Humanity had shown the galaxy that sometimes the scariest-looking beings could become the best allies if you just took the time to understand them.